Light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board. We are the weirdos, mister.
Black as night, erase death from our sight. White as light, mighty hectate, make it right. I myself am strange and unusual. Cast a circle, spark some incense, and grab a cup of tea, because it's time for the Cousins Coven podcast. I'm Sharon.
And this is Wendy. Welcome back to the Coven, you guys. And for any new listeners, welcome.
Yes, welcome to our little coven. So, Wendy, what kind of stories do you have for us this week?
I have just a few, of course. You don't have anything? I don't want to overtake the whole conversation.
Oh, no.
Okay. I have just one really cute story. So in the area that we live in, it's very suburban, I should say. So we live in this neighborhood, we've got a little yard, and we constantly have a lot of birds, and we decided to start feeding the birds. And we are feeding them, this is going to sound, please, no judgments from anybody, you guys, but we've been feeding them like crunchy dog food because we have all these extra bags of dog food that we don't need. Since we went from having 2 dogs down to 1, we don't need it as much. And so I looked it up to make sure it was going to be safe to feed to the birds.
Good.
And I guess that it is, because they need certain proteins that maybe, especially in a suburban area, that they might not be able to get.
That's awesome.
And so I was like, great. So I've seen some really cool things, like the birds feeding each other, including different species. And I just thought, as humans, we could really learn from that they're just taking care of each other and not without any judgments. It's so great. And this morning I went out because they had flipped the bowl and it was completely empty. Like, they were like, we're done, feed us some more. And I noticed, my daughter and I noticed that there were all these little seeds that they had brought us, like these little offerings.
What? That's so cute. Yes. I've heard that they do that. Are they blackbirds?
These are all sorts of birds. We had probably at least 10 different varieties of birds coming.
And for new listeners, they are up in Oregon, so beautiful wildlife, beautiful nature. That's super fun. I wanted to get close to my bird neighbors, but I picked a bad time. I think it was during winter, and I heard that if you go around and you can befriend crows, and if you just like leave little peanuts, but you have to do it unassumingly apparently for crows, because they'll kind of be suspicious if it's super obvious. And so you want to just like drop it and then keep walking, and they'll remember you. And so every time they see you, they'll build that connection with you, and they'll tell their other bird friends about it. And that literally crows communicate, and they're like, that human's cool, go to them. Yeah. And so that sounds like that's what's happening for you guys. And what amazing little gifts. Like, you could totally use those in witchcraft.
Yeah, so we decided that we were going to try to grow the seeds. So my daughter took them immediately and put them in a wet napkin to try to grow them. So we're going to see. I think they're cherry pit seeds.
That's so cool.
That's what they looked like to me. So I was like, great, we can grow a cherry tree. And it was kind of funny, too, because we noticed that there's a lot of bird crap on the top of our house now.
Oh.
And so I think that they've marked our house like, this is the place you can go for food, you guys.
Dang. And most people,
I love birds.
Good. I'm so happy to hear that, because honestly, most adults I feel like would be like, these damn birds pooping on my roof, I'm gonna like hit them or try to shoot them. Like, I'm really used to people like attacking nature because of their house and their yard, and it's like, dude, we're overtaking their land. And like you said, living harmoniously is way beautiful, and I'm super happy to hear this story.
Yeah, it was just so cute. I had to share.
Yeah, I literally have questions on this. So I thought I had to be like a spy and like jumping around and unassumingly dropping like peanuts everywhere. But you can literally just put a bowl out and they're fine with that?
Yeah, I just put a bowl out and they're literally just excited to come and see it. Like, at first they were, a little bit leery, but the second that one ate a piece, then it started calling all of its friends. And they are literally tweeting these little songs. And it's just so beautiful because they're singing together. And I just saw so many different ones. I'll have to try to see if I can take a picture and try to post one. But
yes, or take a video if you can.
Yeah, it was just so cute. My dog freaks out at them, and it's oh my gosh, this is so hilarious. But this neighborhood cat has noticed that the birds are in our in our yard. So of course, cats want to jump on birds. And so the cat has jumped into our yard. And then my dog is like, what? A cat can't be in my yard. And my dog, she's so tiny. She's like the same size as the cat. And she runs up to the sliding glass door, and she's got her chest all puffed out, like, get off my lawn. And the cat is just taunting her on the other side of the glass.
Aww.
It's hilarious. You gotta love it.
I know. I love the difference and dichotomy of like cats versus dogs. I'm definitely a dog person. Like my personality, I'm like a dumb dog who's like, play with me.
Squirrel.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, I know we've been talking about this like a lot, even in episodes and off episodes, but like the theory that mirrors are portals.
Yes.
And it's really been bothering me more and more because I've had a mirror in my room for a couple years now at the foot of my bed, basically. And I already know how bad that is based on like feng shui. You're not supposed to have a mirror at the foot of the bed because it like reflects all of that energy back at you instead of letting it go out the door and out. And it was just like, oh my god, there's a free mirror by the dumpster, let's get that in the house. And it's like this really cool mirror, and I'm like, I'm kind of thinking this is the worst idea ever, because I'll be like trying to go to bed and I look at this mirror in the dark and I'm just like, if this is a fucking portal, it's at the foot of my feet and whatever it wants can come in and out. And I don't like this theory. And it also made me think about how I had this ghost experience, I think I mentioned on podcast, where I started saging afterwards, and my bathroom, the sage started crackling when I was in the bathroom. And I was like, what if that's because there's a mirror and stuff is coming through? And I know I sound super paranoid, but when you're scared at night, these are the weird paranoid thoughts I have.
Right. Well, you can bless it and you can ask that nothing come through.
Yes.
So just say it out loud to the mirror, that you don't want anything to come through it, and maybe move it to the other side. I know, like for me, we have one window in our bedroom, just one little window. I have a floor length mirror, kind of like one of those old timey oval ones that sits on a stand. And I have it facing the window. So maybe think about moving it if you can.
I honestly think I want to just go put it back to the dumpster.
No, don't do that if you use it.
No, I don't.
You should keep it.
I really don't. I feel like it was something where I was like, oh, it's free, I need this, but I don't.
Sure.
I'm in the process of letting go of things in the house.
Oh, good for you.
It's
good for you.
It's a very slow spring clean, but I'm just like trying to evaluate and have less.
Yeah, I love it.
But
I'm all about
I don't know.
that,
Do you think the portal theory is valid? What are your thoughts on this?
Yes.
Ah!
Yeah. I can tell you that I've had a couple of experiences with the mirror portal thing.
No.
I've seen one thing come out.
Okay, tell me everything.
In the nighttime. So it was definitely a woman. She came out. I could see her hair, but not really, because I get so scared, like I talked about in the last episode. And I've been working on this since I saw that last entity. So I'm trying not to get as scared. And I'm actually feeling like I'm getting closer and closer to not having fear anymore. But at the time, this was several years ago, and it was out of my full-length mirror, and I was the first owner of this mirror, so I know if it is a portal, I probably, wished upon it myself, I guess, or brought that into my life.
Holy shit,
so,
okay.
But I did see something come out of it, and it was at night, past the witching hour. I think it was around 2 in the morning, like something had woke me up because I heard a sound. And then I saw something come out of the mirror. And I know my daughter's had experiences too with something coming out of the mirror. But usually it's that she has this thought that if you're looking in the mirror, you may be able to see your other self.
Your shadow self, maybe?
Or from a different plane of existence. She believes in this theory of that there are other planes of existence where there's another you.
Yeah, parallel universes.
And she believes that there's a possibility you can travel back and forth in between each other's lives. So I don't know, it's a fun theory. I don't know if I believe in that one, but I definitely know that things can come out of the mirror. The lady that came, it was almost like she was using it. I don't know. She definitely seemed that she was from the spirit realm.
Okay, in my mind, I'm imagining her like the ring lady with like hair over her eyes. What does she look like?
No, she just had long brown hair, almost ringlets, but not really. Like maybe she had curled it that way, feathered in the front, and she appeared to be wearing jeans. I couldn't see her feet because where I was laying, I just couldn't see if she had feet or anything. But she looked like she was wearing jeans and maybe a blue colored shirt. And she came out and she didn't acknowledge me. She looked up towards the ceiling and then she just went out the window.
Oh my God.
The window open.
What the hell? I'm getting goosebumps. That is so weird. She's like, okay, I'm in a new portal and there's my exit. Bloop. And you just she just dropped into Earth to go terrorize. Now, I don't know why.
She just, I don't say terrorize.
Yeah, no, this is my fear. That's my fear. What the hell? Did she look like solid or see-through?
No, she seemed see-through to me, but I think that was at the time because I was terrified. I think had I not been scared, and maybe if I talked to her, she would have talked to me.
Oh my God.
Maybe. Yeah. I think that I'm finding out that the more that I progress, the more open I become, the more open that they are to me. So I feel like if I can hone it a little bit better and if I can just get rid of my human fear of that situation,
right,
then maybe, yeah.
Right. I mean, speaking of fear, like that's kind of what I was thinking last night. Like literally I was staring at that mirror and I'm saying it out loud to my husband. I'm just like, I'm scared of this mirror. It's a portal. And I'm like, don't say that right now that you're scared of it in the dark and give it that power. You know, I'm like,
Right.
I should probably be stronger than that and
Right.
not afraid of a mirror. Oh, man. That's crazy though.
But I definitely believe, I mean, obviously since I've seen it, I definitely believe it can be a
Yeah.
portal, but I also believe that it's not anything that we should be afraid of.
Right.
So.
I love that. It's crazy because there's so many unknown things. And the more we dig, the less answers I find.
Yes. Okay, guys, so just so you know, any sort of background noise, we apologize. There seems to be some work going on outside, and we just
Yes.
I want to keep you guys informed.
Yeah, it's going to be like a really nice ambient construction zone for the next hour. So it's like a little ASMR, a drill.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys.
No big deal. Cool.
Awesome. Well, did you have any other personal stuff, or did you want to get into the news?
I do.
Oh my gosh.
I do.
Okay.
So I, as you guys know, I've been doing Enochian magic.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Or trying to. So we finished up our seal this week and we got it all together. And I got to say that with my experience, I read these books about Enochian magic. We did the episode about Enochian magic. And then everything that I read, it was so complex. It was very ancient. And then I kind of decided to take this other approach since my family and I are doing this magic together. We decided that we would let our spirit guides help us or any other guides that wanted to help us. And so instead of following the book 100% to the T.
Good for you. Yeah. I think that's necessary.
Yeah. And so we're putting kind of our own touches on it. And it definitely, I feel that for us, and I don't know if it's because we're more open or our abilities or because we all have abilities, our own, that potentially maybe we didn't have to do some of the things that they were requiring just because we can enhance the situation ourselves. I don't know if that makes sense. So for us, we got our seal made. We got the tablecloth that we were supposed to use. We have our robes, and we wrote our own spell initially. So it came to us, we were just sitting there, and I was like, we should kind of maybe write a spell so that when we're making the wax seal, we can just say it out loud to kind of tell what our intentions are of making this seal. And that way the angels or spirits who are going to be talking to us are aware of what we intend to get out of it,
right?
Of the experience.
I feel like I saw a video of the seal, so I have a good idea, but we should kind of explain what you mean by a seal to listeners.
Yes. So the seal that we made was out of 2 different colors of wax. So first we took there are many easier ways to do it than the way that we did it, but we felt that we needed to do it this way so that we were putting our intentions into it and that we were taking our time, and it literally took us probably a total, if I added it all together, it probably took us 16 to 24 hours to make
awesome.
it. It's intense, yeah. And so basically what we did was we took this red these red candles, and we put them on this we had this wooden wheel, and we put wax paper over it, and we made a circle. We lit the candles and made a circle with the wax. So we were dripping the wax from the candle into a circle shape.
Mm-hmm. Building it up to be like how many inches tall?
It's probably 3 inches tall once we got the white on it too, because it's a red in the center, kind of like flesh colored, and then white on the outside. And then we painted it with this flesh color on the outside. So it's like a living and breathing seal, and you can feel energy off of it.
Wow.
And it kind of feels like it has a heartbeat.
That's crazy intense. I mean, that's so powerful. I mean, like you said, all those hours of just dripping that wax using your family magic, it's some strong stuff right there.
Yes. And then once we had the red done, we ended up putting, or as we were melting the red, I should say, we also put in like dirt from outside. We put in some leaves. We put in offerings of ourselves. So like my husband put his hair in there. My son ground up some of his old baby teeth and put it in there. I put in like a nail. My daughter put in something of hers. And so we put all of ourselves into there. And then we covered it with white wax. And then once the wax was all dried, we ended up carving the symbols into it. So the books of Enochian Magic give you what symbols you should put into it. And for us, we didn't use every single symbol that they had on the seal. We felt that it wasn't 100% necessary for what we were intending to do. But each time we were doing a specific layer, we ended up writing this spell that came to us that we worked on together, and we said it out loud. So what we didn't know at the time was that spell that we said initially was the spell to open up the first door. When we were done with the seal on Friday, we let it sit overnight, and then Saturday we sat down because we were like, well, maybe we should do the seal. But all I did was touch it, and my daughter touched it, and nobody else was in the room. It was just her and I. And then all of a sudden it just felt like all of this information was being downloaded into me. So we had already opened up the first door, is what they had told us. And then I can't tell you what we found out, because that's not for me to share. It was meant for us and not for other people, but I can tell you the experience. It just kind of opened my mind a little bit to how the world works, and the information that was given to us was extremely ancient, like I would say from celestial beings.
Wow.
It is extremely intense, and I wish I could give you more information than that, except for to say...
Oh, go ahead.
Except for to say that it just was, once I process it fully, it will be extremely transformative to my life.
I really appreciate you being as open as you are. Like, that's one thing maybe listeners can appreciate, and if you're into magic, you'd understand that you want to keep some of that stuff personal. Magic is super personal, and to share as much as we're sharing, sometimes, that's way more than other people would give it. I do have a question, though, about the seal. So the seal, it's a circle with all these carvings and all this wax and intention. And what is it that is for? Is it just to be a conduit of power?
Yes, it's a gateway. So basically, how they explained it in Enochian Magic, like when it was written by John Dee and Edward Kelly back in the 1500s, they explained that it was really a gateway, that angels would come out of it. Kind of like, how should I say this? I can only put it towards like TV shows. So like kind of like Star Trek, when they would have that little handheld thing and they could see people kind of, do you remember that handheld thing? And sometimes the people, they could see their full bodies in the handheld
I want to
thing.
say you're talking
like
about a tricorder,
image.
But maybe that's wrong.
Yeah, something like that. So basically it was like their little image would pop up and talk to them. Well, for us, it was different. We didn't actually see any angels. So the symbols on it are angelic symbols and angelic words. So basically in the actual Enochian Magic, you're supposed to use a pendulum, and the angel is supposed to give you one letter at a time from their language, and then you have to take those letters and decipher it back. Well, for us, it was different. So I know from everything that I've read about Enochian Magic and everybody else's experiences, they all did it this long way where you had to get the information by using the angelic symbols.
Gotcha.
And that's why they wanted to do it on the seal. But for us, it was not like that.
Yeah. What's a good book for anyone who's interested in Enochian magic that you'd recommend?
There are these wonderful books called the Mastering of Enochian Magic series. And it's like he's got a volume 1 and a volume 2, and it's by Scott Michael Stenwick. And I definitely think that this is a good starting point. He gives a lot of information. He gives everything that you need, the rings, the lamens that you're supposed to wear. He gives all of the things that you need, except for the names of the angels and the questions that you have to ask, because that's something that you have to figure out on your own.
I like that.
Yeah. And so for us, like I can't remember if I mentioned this last week or not, but for us, we wrote down the angel names because they came to me in a vision. I had some angel talking through me to give me all of the angel names. And so we wrote all of them down.
Mm-hmm. That's super awesome. And these books, it sounds like they're translating really, really old magic for more modern day. Like these were written probably in the last, 20 years?
I think you did. And he actually maintains a website as well, so that people can go ask him questions, and he still gives some kind of like talks about them. I think that he does these where he goes to some sort of class and he teaches people about Enochian magic. So if you wanted to, and everybody uses it differently. Some people use it to better their lives for financial gain. Some people use it for, their job or communication. And like I said, my goal was to use it for worldly and celestial knowledge. So
just that old worldly and celestial knowledge.
Yeah. I just want to know the secrets of the universe. That's all.
Yeah. Awesome.
Not asking for much.
Well, I'm really glad to hear more updates on that. Like it's a really cool system of magic that I don't think I would have ever known about if it wasn't for you. So
I'm glad to share it with everybody. It's nice to be able to talk it out to just my experience and to share it with other people. So don't be afraid. I guess the reason why I wanted to share it is don't be afraid to try new things and
listen to your intuition and what calls to you.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of times that intuition is your spirit guide. You just have to open yourself up a little bit more to hear it.
Yeah.
That's about all I had on that. Hopefully that didn't take too long. I know I'm just rambling.
Okay. So, all right. And we did get a listener question we have to answer today from Christina. And she was wondering if we had any good suggestions for pendulum work and a good grounding ritual to go along with it too.
Yes.
So I know we talked about scrying in depth, I think in like episode 15 or so of season 1.
I think so. Yeah. My daughter came on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we did talk about that. And I personally don't do grounding work when I scry. I learned scrying like maybe 5 years after I got into witchcraft. And at that point, I was already pretty confident in my abilities to just be grounded and centered pretty quickly, where I didn't need to do like deep meditation. Mm-hmm. I felt like I could just grab my pendulum and go. And I do that all the time. Like my pendulum is usually like on my coffee table or around me with my purse, and anywhere I go, I can just ask questions, and I'm not really worried about grounding. But I have heard from another witch perspective that she felt like anytime I was doing that I'd be opening up these portals and disaster would ensue, and I would create like tsunamis or something. And I was just like, what? Like, no, I don't feel like that way at all. Yeah. What about you? What do you think?
So I think for me, initially when I started using the pendulum, I only did a protection spell around the area so that it wouldn't do what she said, like tsunamis and things like that. But usually with every magic thing that we do, we always do protection, right, to keep it in our area. So I would do that, and then I would just try to meditate. It's really about, and also to keep that pendulum with you all the time for a while, especially when you first get it, so that it gets to know you, and ask it a question every day, one question at least every day, so that it can get to know you and understand that it now belongs to you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And thank it. Like, I know we talked about that.
Thank it. Make sure to say thank you. But as far as grounding goes, really only meditation in the beginning. And now I don't even need to do that. But yeah, in the beginning, it would just be meditation, a lot of deep breathing, making sure that you're in line, so that if you're in line, then you can hear, see, feel, use all of your senses to get what it's trying to tell you.
Yeah. And I should share with you too, like the beginning grounding ritual that I learned I'll still incorporate today in many things, like with my yoga practice and stuff. But it was from the Scott Cunningham book, probably the one I always mention, like the Solitary Guide for the Witch. I just learned everything from that book. And like, as far as grounding goes, he would talk about how you want to imagine like a system of roots stemming from the base of your spine down to that earth. And when you inhale, you're bringing in that white light and good energy. And the exhale, you're letting go of all the old stagnant air. And like that is something that is tried and true. And if you just need to ground yourself, I feel like imagining roots and the earth is a great way to feel grounded. Just feel that connection down below.
Absolutely.
And what does that mean to you? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then pendulum work. I love incorporating my pendulum into everything. I love using it when I pick my tarot cards. I think it can even be fun in trying to pick like numbers, and you can make your own little charts and have like a yes no or put numbers down. Like get really creative with it.
Yep. And you can make your one of those circle pendulum boards if you wanted to. I've used the Ouija board. You can pretty much use the pendulum with anything.
I know that there are a lot of different techniques too. Like people say you can use scrying to even detect which chakras are blocked like over the body if someone's laying down. Another like just exercise, if you just want to like test yourself, is you could literally get like 2 or 3 cups and put something underneath and do that whole like shuffle trick, or have someone else shuffle it for you, and so that you try to like ask where is the thing under this cup or is it under this cup, and that is like a really solid way for you to know for a fact if you're getting the right answers.
Correct. Yeah. Good times. Great answer. Great question. Thank you for sending that in to us.
Yeah, anyone else have any witch-related questions, you can always email us at cousinscoven2@gmail.com.
And we'll add them to an episode when we get to them. I know we're a little bit behind as far as when we record them, when we get the messages. But we will respond to you and let you know what season it's going to be in. Maybe not the episode number, but the season.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. Well, we wanted to go ahead and do a cauldron topics. And so for today, I want to talk about something I am in the process of doing, which is making a witch's ladder. And I don't know if you've ever heard of a witch's ladder before.
I haven't.
Okay, cool. So this is a form of folk magic, and it's kind of like a cord magic, knot magic, or you could call it string magic. And really, the modern day witch's ladder is what I kind of want to get into first. It's like basically you can tie a braid using 3 different cords, and you could use a specific color depending on the intent of the spell, like we always talk about, and you're going to basically be braiding and putting your intention into the magic as you braid, kind of like how are you talking about the seal. So as you're braiding, you can use different things to put into this rope, like feathers from different birds, seashells, beads, crystals, any kind of thing that you want to put into it. And as you're braiding, you can say a specific spell, or you can just put in your intention into it, and when you're done, it'll have like a specific purpose. So maybe you want to make one for protecting your home, or maybe you want to make one that's just beads, and then you use that when you pray, and you don't have to keep count of what you're doing, just like prayer beads. So you can do all these specific types of ones. And so I went to the craft store and I got like these crystal beads. I found like some amethyst beads, some bird feathers, and I think I'm going to end up making like 2 different witches ladders because I'm just super excited. And I have been seeing them around and seeing different beautiful intricate ones, and a lot of times they'll take the feather and they'll put them like horizontally on the rope, so that you just hang the rope like on a hook on the wall, and then it kind of looks like a little ladder basically with those feathers going in that direction.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and so I'm excited. I have some ideas of what I want to make, and I got some seashell type things to put in there, being a water witch and very connected to the ocean. And I decided to like look back into what I could find, like, well, where did these come from? I'm always really fascinated about like our magical roots, I guess. And so there was an actual recorded document of the first ever witch's ladder found in 1878. It was found in this old house in Wellington, Somersetshire, and apparently there were these books called the folklore journals, and I could find them on Wiki and actually like dig through them. There were a lot of volumes, and so the witch's ladder made it into volume 5, and basically it would be people trying to document different folklore beliefs all over the world, so from like China to Barbados to America. And a lot of times seemed like it was written from the outsider perspective, looking into different kind of cultures and witchcraft and hoodoo and all this different kind of things, and they were just trying to document it, which I did kind of appreciate. Like, even if you weren't practicing, I appreciate that you thought it was cool enough to document and not like burn or destroy.
Yeah.
And so volume 5, one of the writers is Dr. Abraham Collies, and he would go around and looking into old buildings and stuff. And so there was this really old building that he was talking to the owners about, and apparently that it was like built on top of or became a part of an expansion of an old farmhouse, and that the walls were super, super thick, and they had like these cob walls with like thatching that would be several feet thick between the walls, and even the ceiling to the roof had a big thickness about it. And some of the rooms that they would walk into, they would be less than 5 feet tall, the room, so you'd have to like slouch down to go in these rooms.
Wow.
And it became so dangerous that they had to demolish a part of the house and like, you know, rebuild these old ass walls. And when they were digging up into the ceiling, the gap between the ceiling and the roof, the workers ended up discovering 6 brooms, an old armchair, and then a rope with feathers woven into it. And it was really weird because that room would be inaccessible from the interior of the house. So I think that maybe the only way in would be from maybe the roof or something, is what they're implying. Maybe a window from the roof. And the brooms were so decayed that when they like grabbed them, that the handles decayed under the pressure. But the people were like, hey, these are 6 brooms, we're gonna use these, and they repurposed them and remade them, and they used the brooms. But for some reason they decided to keep that old weird rope and then the armchair stored into storage. And so when this guy, Dr. Abram, comes into the house, he's like, oh, I want to see, where's the chair, where's this weird rope, let me look at it. And he talked to them about it and got their opinions on it, and the workers just assumed that there were 6 witches that would go up there. They would sit in this chair, and they made this weird little rope, and they called this rope the witch's ladder. And they're like, yeah, we think that they would fly off from the roof, and they would use this rope as the ladder to get between different rooftop to rooftop. And
oh my gosh,
this little rope thing must have been to protect the home and to be like good omen kind of a thing. And this was all just some sort of knowledge that they, I guess, had picked up from maybe whispers of the women and the folklore, you know, just how those kind of traditions go about by ear. But the Abraham wanted more solid answers, and he was trying to ask different women who he thought were witches, and he would even ask them like, oh, do you know about witchcraft? And they'd be like, oh yeah, I know about the rope and the feathers, I know about that. And he'd be like, okay, so what is it? And they would not disclose. They're like, oh, nothing, that's nothing, no, I'm not gonna tell you. So a big folklore belief, you know, you don't want to tell people what your magic is, otherwise it could deplete the magic or even like be bad for you. So he couldn't get any witches to say what it was, but he published it in this folklore journal, and other people would write in with what they've heard about them. And so like the rumors of what witches' ladders could be kind of grew to be super weird.
Wow.
So like one of them was that, oh, I heard that if you take the witch's ladder and you swing it over your head a couple times and you wish for something, it'll come true. Another person wrote in and was like, no, I heard that the witch's ladder was used to like curse people, and you could put it in like a baby's bassinet at night and they would die the next morning, like super horrible. Another person was like, oh, I heard that if the witch would get on the roof and dangle the rope down through the hole, like where the chimney would be, into the person who was down below, and like suck on it, and it would kind of like suck away their life force and curse them. Other people were saying you could also do the exact opposite and do that to heal somebody, so to like suck someone's ailments out, like poison kind of thing. And then they get, of course, even more outlandish, in my opinion, is that they would use this to steal the milk from like a neighbor's cow, and that they would put one end of the rope into the bucket and the other one they would throw out over towards the other farm, and with their kind of incantations they'd be able to actually take the milk into that rope and down into their bucket. And so some supernatural stuff, right? Very, very superstitious.
I love it.
And so today we make witches' ladders for protection and for good things. You can like use your own hair, all those kinds of things, like you were talking about, put yourself into it. But nowadays, like, that's what we use them for. And you kind of just want to hang it like maybe on your wall somewhere and not really mention it to other people, or have it like, some people still think that if they even see it or assume that it's something magical that it'll lose power. I kind of don't think that way. I feel like I'll just hang mine when I do make it on my wall and be cool with it in my witchy area.
Right. And you could just think of it as a really fun decoration too. So can I just ask one question? Do you think the rope could be different colors? Could you do different colored rope?
Yes, exactly. So you want to pick a color based on the need.
Okay.
And so if you don't know your color charts, there's plenty of those online. I decided to pick colors that resonate with me as a witch, and I feel like that's blue and purple. Purple is a very magical color for me, and then blue is very much about the water elements. And then I decided to grab a black string as well because black is so universally powerful for banishing negativity and things like that.
Nice.
So I'm going to try to braid those 3 ropes together with the amethyst beads, and I forgot what this stone was called, but it's like a black but kind of iridescent-y looking, and then I have like these little seashell things I'm going to like weave into it.
Nice.
And I have a few charms here or there that I thought, oh, this is like a moon charm I could add, or a pentagram charm I could add, and I want to do one maybe for just like the prayer beads and just kind of make it where it's just those smooth beads, and then maybe one that's more traditional with the feathers.
That's cool.
And I'm excited. I wasn't quite sure how big of a project it would be. Like, just when I first got all the supplies, I was like, okay, I gotta sage this shit.
Right.
And it starts off with just like I'm grabbing the sage to having like a full-blown altar in the middle of my floor where I'm like, oh, but I'll just grab this and grab this and grab this and grab this, and I have a bowl of water with salt, and I'm like putting the rope in the water with salt and blessing everything. And
nice.
So I've really only blessed my stuff, and now I'm kind of thinking about, I have enough supplies to probably make 2.
Very cool. And how long are they?
The one that they found, I think they said was 5 feet in length, but modern day ones, they look quite small. Like by the time you're done braiding it, it looks like it's maybe the size of like 12 feet or something.
Oh, okay.
12 inches.
12
inches.
Sorry. I was like, dang, 12 feet? Yikes.
12 feet, yeah. You gotta make it far so you can throw it at that cow and get that milk. But you can use all kinds of things like the seashells, crystals, beads, feathers, even dried plants, animal bones. Really get creative with it. Some people are going to bury it. Some people want to hang it on their wall. All kinds of things. And there's a really common chant that I found online, which is kind of cute, that you would like. Some people are going to be really specific and they're only going to tie 9 knots. So there's this chant that goes, by the knot of 1, the spell's begun. By the knot of 2, the magic's come true. By the knot of 3, so it shall be. By knot of 4, the power is stored. By knot of 5, my will shall drive. By knot of 6, the spell I fix. By knot of 7, the future I leaven. By knot of 8, my will be fate. By knot of 9, what is done is mine. And so at each knot, you could maybe tie one of those objects, is what they do.
That's so cool. I love it.
Yeah, I love the idea of learning what witches did in America, I guess, before, and all that ancient magic and making it kind of modern.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. I also really wonder about like 6 brooms. Like, was it really witches just up there with their brooms?
Maybe. We'll never know.
Right?
So
Never
fun.
know.
So fun. Well, should we move on?
Yes.
Or did you have more to say?
No, I'm good on that. I definitely think we should dive in because we have a lot to say in a little time.
Yes. Okay. So today we're talking about the story that I came across, or this experience, I should say. It's more than just a story to me, about a woman named Lucy Jellison. And I didn't find out where she was born or anything like that, but I think that I want to start off by saying this story may be a little bit darker than we would normally do. At times there might be something a little bit graphic. So if you're sensitive to that kind of information, you may want to, you don't have to listen to the graphic part. Not all of it's graphic, but some of it might be. Lucy, let me start by saying how I came across her, and then I'll kind of go into her background and then her story, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about my experiences. So I came across this woman. I was on a ghost tour probably 8 years ago in downtown Salem, Oregon, and they were talking about a woman named Lucy. Well, I may be getting this woman's name wrong. Not the woman that I'm going to talk about, but this woman that they were talking about on the ghost tour. But they were talking about her, how she was owned a brothel and she was rich. And I wanted to find out more about her. But as I was leaving the ghost tour, I started just nonstop thinking about that her name must have been Lucy. And when I went to go home and look her up, I came across Lucy Jellison, and then her spirit started speaking to me. Like, while I was on the ghost tour, it was like she followed me home and she wanted me to know her story. So it made me look into her more. I don't know if I'm making sense. Does that make sense?
Yes. I totally understand that.
Okay. So she came home. She wanted me to know more, and she wanted me to get her story out there. And So what I found out about her is that she was actually born Lucy Ford sometime in 1870, and she wasn't born in Oregon. She was born somewhere in the Midwest, and she moved here after she got married, and she ended up being married 3 times. And before her death, she was about ready to be married to this other man, and that's how she came up with the name Lucy Jellison, because she took the 4th man's name before they were even married.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. She had 5 kids, and she died in 1912. So let me just say that at the time before she died, she was in a really dark spot. They didn't have child support per se back in those old days. So she had these children from different men and was not getting any support, and she had to support them on her own. And if we remember back in the time period, in the early 1900s, women really weren't, having everyday jobs like we have today. They weren't in the workforce making tons of money.
Right.
And so at that time, she was working as a waitress at a local little cafe. And her and her children were living in what they called a tent city. And it's kind of right now, there's a man-made pond where this tent city was, but it was kind of close to downtown. So like all these people who couldn't afford to live in houses, they would build these kind of larger tents, and people would just live in them. Kind of like you would see like on an old show back in the 1200s or something, how they would live in these tents.
So they're essentially homeless?
Essentially, but not, because it was kind of like there wasn't enough housing, but there were all of these people, and maybe their houses were being built, or maybe there just wasn't enough money. They didn't consider them to be homeless. You still had to pay rent to have that tent. It was just
Dang.
Yeah. So she still had to pay to live in this tent area. It was just a home.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very Oregon.
Right. Very Oregon. So I guess I should say the ages of her children. So she had the 5 children, the oldest of which, his name was Russell, and he had just turned 18 and decided that he wanted to go to school. And in order to go to school, he needed to move away from his mom, because if he lived with his mom at the age that he had to provide for his family, because he was the oldest male. So even though he wasn't married to his mom, he was still considered to be the man of the house because of his age. Mm-hmm. And that's just how it was back in the old days in America. So he would have to work, give his mom all of his money, and then she would pay the bills. Well, he didn't want that for himself. He wanted to go on to have a different type of life. So he ran away, so to speak. But he was an adult, so it's not like she could be like, "Cops, I need you to find my son and bring him back." Well, this was her source of income other than working at the cafe. And now she didn't have enough money to pay for the other children that she had at home, which were the ages of 13, 15, 11, and 9. So she had all of these children, and she didn't know what to do with them. And she wasn't sure how she could feed them. And sometimes this is the really, really sad part, but sometimes they would have one thing of porridge once a day to eat between all of them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And sometimes she would forgo her own food so that she could feed them. But she was worried about how she was going to be able to take care of her children for until they were 18, until they could move out or help in some way. Mm-hmm. And she started feeling like she was really at the end of her rope. And she ended up writing a letter to the police officers in town, and she sent it to them, and she said, "I know the law requires an investigation, but please do as little as possible. Plain fact is, I cannot earn enough alone to keep me from starving. Someone induced my boy to leave me, and now I am too ill to work. I cannot see my other children starve. There's little money in my purse. I have $21. Please use this money to take us all and bury us. Sorry to make so much disturbance." And then she signed her name. And so when the police got this letter, of course, they were freaking out, and they went to her little tent where she was at. And they did find more letters. And she says, "Remember all the time you still have work to do. I want you to do me one more favor. Find my son and try to soften his heart toward me enough so that he will heed my last wishes for his benefit. I want him to go to school. It was a grief to me always that I had to keep him out of school, and he's going to need some good friends. I could wish he would go to an agricultural college. Please help him do this. I pray you do not grieve for us. You must live to watch over your own. I've done what little I could to help you over some ruts. I wish I need not have given you this blow. I cannot help it. When I've been cross with you lately. So basically she's talking about how she was really angry with her son for leaving, but she didn't mean to be cross with him. So she wrote him this letter saying, please forgive me for what I've done. And she ends up poisoning her children and herself.
Oh my God, no.
Yes, because she felt she was at her rope's end and there was no one to help her. And she was sick. She couldn't take care of herself and she couldn't take care of the kids that she had. And she felt like she had no other choice. And back then there wasn't food stamps or anything like this. And one of the letters that they did find was like, I started with the oldest child first, and she says, and she poisoned them with rat poison. So that was the last purchase, the last receipt that she had in her presence was buying this rat poison. Right?
Oh my God.
And so I apologize for the darkness of this, but
I can't help but be so mad at her.
Right. In the beginning, you can't help but be so mad about her decision. But I learned to have an understanding with her based on the experiences that I had. Like when I first heard the story, I was mortified and I was mad and I was angry. I was like, why do you want people to hear this story? Why do you want me to get this out so bad? And she's like, she would give me these visions of her life. She kept telling me that it wasn't always bad. She had a good life at some point, but she made poor choices and she couldn't seem to keep a husband around. Usually when you married, if there was some sort of violence in the relationship, you couldn't just always get out of it right away. So like her first husband, from reports that I read, was that he was kind of abusive and controlling towards her, but she couldn't get out of it right away. And so, she ended up having children with him, and she finally eventually left, married the next husband, and he just wasn't right. So she left. And with each husband, she had another child. So it was just like, she kept showing me that she had all of these obstacles and she didn't quite know how to fix them, and she didn't know, she felt like she was just at her last rope and there really wasn't anything in the society at that time to help her with these children when she had no husband, because there was no male to speak for her. She had no rights. Mm-hmm. And so it just was really sad that she said that I read that she was extremely depressed and that's what made her ill. She killed her oldest son or her oldest daughter first and then went down the line until it was the youngest. And then when he had passed, then she said she couldn't live with herself anymore. And she didn't intend to kill herself initially, but then she took the poison too, and she said, forgive me for what I've done. She wrote, that was the last piece of paper that they found right before she passed out, was forgive me for what I've done. I'm so sorry.
Wow. So what do you think the condition was like for those other people? Was this something that was common? Was this how horrible the tent people had it, basically? Or do you think this was rare?
I think that this was a situation where there was no male involved. There were other women that were like her. I did read reports basically that it was a rare situation, but not extremely rare. There were people like her all over the United States. So after I had found out about her, I started doing research. I was lucky enough to have access to like old newspaper articles from back then, not just from Oregon, but they have this place called newspapers.com where when you're researching ancestry, you can look up newspaper articles from across the United States. So I did a search for her name and it also came up with a news article straight out of Washington, D.C. And the news article was saying not just her name, but other names that also died in the same time period. So she died March 3rd, 1912. And in 1912, there were other women who also poisoned their children.
Wow.
And themselves.
Because their fear of starvation is a reality.
And they couldn't take care of their family. And so there were no means to help them. And it was based on this information and all of these women that they came up with food stamps.
Are you serious? This is the tragic origin of food stamps? The hell?
Because the Washington, D.C., the state senators or whatever it was at the time. I'm not very keen on that language, but whoever was in charge at the time was like, we need to do something about this. We can't let humans starve just because there's no man to take care of them. So they were like, what are we going to do? And they were like, each state should have a certain funding to be able to give them money. And that's how they came up with the food stamps.
Wow. I always want to start a slow clap. Like, dang.
It's so sad and tragic that this had to happen in order for them to come up with this program.
I honestly did not expect any cherry on top to this story, and I am actually my mind is blown that this is the reality of the situation, that such tragedy is what caused this organization to go about.
Right.
And it's helped so many people. I know that it helps a lot of people, my family growing up and things like that. So wow. And I have to unpack something here.
Yeah, go for it.
Us normal people who don't just talk to ghosts on the regular, can you unpack how she came to you and what that experience was like when she was talking to you? And was there further contact or just one time?
No, it was several times. It was over a period of months. So basically, I feel like she was with me while I was on that ghost tour. Like, right. I was initially wanting to know more about this woman who owned a brothel, but she was with me. And so even though I can't remember that name of the woman with the brothel, I still remember this Lucy. It was the name that stuck in my head. And when I went to do the research, I could feel her with me. And because I've always been kind of afraid of my abilities, like I had said earlier, that I was sitting there and she was trying to show me images, because that's how I could process what ghosts were trying to give me, if they could send me images. So she was giving me images about her life and how things were, and I would write them down. And I started physically, I've got all these scribbles of her telling me what happened in her life. So I've got all these papers in storage of her just writing to me. Like I was journal writing, but I was writing it from her perspective as she was telling it to me.
That is so fucking cool.
Right?
Okay.
And so then, go ahead. Go ahead and ask your question.
This is the coolest thing ever, that you're able to harness it. And it's almost like, it sounds like something I would see in a movie, but this is just how you handled it.
This is just how I handled it, and it was real stuff. So then when I started looking at the newspaper articles, I came across where she was buried at, which was here in town. And I felt it necessary to go to her grave to pay respects to her and her children. I just felt like I needed to go there. And I found them. And at the time, in that time period, anybody who didn't have money, they would bury them, but they would bury them in unmarked graves. And her children were buried in one grave, which was unmarked. And
how'd you find it?
I am lucky enough that the cemetery that she was buried in is called Salem Pioneer Cemetery, and they have the most amazing records. There. Yes, it's an amazing cemetery. I have other family who was buried there, so I was excited. I was like, well, I can go visit Grandma and I can see Lucy. So I visited her grave. On their website, they list exactly what lot they're in. So I was able to find her. They were just buried in this one grave, and everything's numbered in this cemetery, which is really nice. I can say that I've been to thousands of cemeteries across the United States, and this one was put together so well that everything is marked. Every grave is marked with a number, and they have a map on their website, and so you can see exactly where somebody's buried at.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's very nice.
So when you got to the grave, was there a wave of release or a message from her?
I fell to my knees and cried.
Oh. I
just cried. And I had other people with me. I had probably a group of 4 or 5 people. I just fell to my knees and cried. Ironically, the woman who I was initially trying to find, the woman who owned the brothel, was also buried in the cemetery. So we went to her grave, but she had this massive headstone because she was rich. She had lots of money. So it was just stark, strange to see, a woman who had probably $1 million back in the old days had this grand gravestone, and this woman who had nothing, who had to kill her own children for fear, had nothing. There was no nameplate, no nothing.
Right. And I have to ask, do the people who you were with, do they know what's going on? Or do they just like, whoa, Wendy?
No, I told them the whole story. I was like, I really need to go here. They were intending to go see the brothel woman, and I was intending to go see Lucy. And so what was really fun for me, even though I had a map, I didn't actually need the map. She guided me. When I saw her, Lucy showed herself to me, but not until we were in the cemetery. When I was in the cemetery, I could see who she was based on the fact that she showed herself in a black dress, like an old-timey early 1900s black dress, like the kind that go all the way up to the neck and all the way down. And she showed herself to me where her grave was. So I was able to go to her and fall and cry and feel kind of release. I did feel a lot of release afterwards.
So do you think it's like they are connecting themselves to you until you're able to help them, basically?
I don't know. And I don't know how I helped her. I mean, I didn't really tell very many people about the story until now. Now, years later, here I am telling the story. I think a piece of her has always been with me, and I felt for her. I've been poor before, so I know what it's like to not have any money or wonder where your next meal is going to come from. So I don't know if that's why she attached herself to me at that point. It's not like she was causing me any harm, and she never stayed with me for very long. She just needed me to know the story.
Maybe that was helpful for her because think how guilty she was feeling, and you were someone who maybe she understood that you gave her that empathy.
Right.
And that it was probably healing for her just to say like, hey, you get it right. Like, this happened.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just super sad kind of story, but I'm glad that there was some good that came out of it later on.
Oh, yeah. That was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
How many... So she was the person who basically made it a thing, or was it multiple instances?
It was multiple instances. So I believe that I found that there were 4 people who actually killed their family in that same month, in the month of March 1912, across the United States. And I believe what I had read was that was a really cold winter, and winter was sitting in really long in Oregon. So...
1912?
Yeah, 1912.
Wow. I mean, this, not to loop this all back or anything to birds, but seriously, just like how the birds were flourishing and helping each other out.
Sure.
How you were saying we could learn from that.
Exactly. Right.
Just, helping people out.
Mm-hmm. And I know it's hard because there are a lot of homeless people now. Like I know here in Oregon, and I'm sure it's all across the United States, but in Salem, we have tent cities here still today, but they don't charge them money. In fact, Salem is really bad. We're trying to make it better, but we're really bad with our homeless people. Like we try to shoo them off. So the police officers constantly give them tickets for trespassing or vagrancy. And I think that just puts the homeless people in a really bad spot. I know that they're in their place in life for a reason. Like maybe things are not as bad today as they were back in 1912. Everybody has an opportunity to work, but a lot of people don't. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, these people are homeless. And I've heard a lot of homeless stories because of where I work at. I hear their life story. I've heard several of them. So it's hard to say what makes a person homeless. And I wish there was more that we could do for them. But in a way, I know there are a lot of people in America who feel it's their own fault. They're choosing this. But some people feel like they have no choice but to be homeless. Oh no. You guys, we had a little bit of issue with the audio. I'm going to try to piece this together.
The aliens, Mother Lord ship doesn't want our information getting out.
But what you missed was Sharon was talking about the Rajneeshis here in Oregon, and then I went off on a tangent about sovereign nations.
So yes, like Wendy was saying, we did talk about the Rajneeshis and all that, and I was just trying to... how I got to that tangent was that 3,000 homeless people were bussed over to Oregon to like help this cult make a vote to take over a town, and then eventually all those homeless people just got back into Oregon. And so yeah, there's a really bad homeless situation going on over there, and it is, like Wendy was saying, just hard to help everybody out.
It is completely.
So let's just say, to summarize her tale, like what do you think we could take for, like what do you think her ghost would want you to say? Or
I think that she just wanted her story out there, that now from what I got from it, because there were periods of my life where I felt low, I never thought about killing my children, but or anything like that for sure. But I think that she just wanted me to know that when you're feeling low, you don't have to end it. There are means of help nowadays. You can go to your family. Whereas back in the old days, a lot of times they weren't able to go to their family. If they weren't married, their family sometimes shunned them, especially in her situation where she had all those children who were from different fathers. That's common today, but back then it really wasn't. And so now we have all of these outreach programs that we could really go to. I guess that was kind of what she wanted me to know if I were in a desperate spot. And if other people who are listening to this are in a desperate spot, don't feel that you're alone, because you're never alone.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like, can't you just try to ask this other person or ask this person for help? Like, how hard is it for you? And of course, like you're saying, it's because she was a woman, and just so many things stacked against her. And I think that all my life I was taught, don't talk to homeless people, don't help homeless people. And so I don't know if that's just an Oregon thing. I
don't think so, because I never taught my children not to talk to homeless people. I told them to be wary of people who are in white vans, but not homeless people. I know that my daughter has talked to them several times. She seems to remember, or she told me the story probably a couple of months ago, where she was outside on her break at work, probably having a cigarette or something, and she was just taking a break, and this homeless woman came up to her and was like telling her whole life story, that she used to be somebody and she used to have things, but then she had a divorce and it caused her to go into poverty, and she felt like she had no choice. And then when she was living without stuff and when she was living without money, she realized that all of the negative things in her life were caused by the money and the stuff that she had. And so she chose to be homeless based on the fact that she didn't have to worry about anything anymore.
Yeah, I think it's kind of eye-opening, because true, I was talking to this woman just this week who had gone through like a weird fraud situation, and she ended up getting put in like this immigration camp for like months, I think like 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
And they thought she was some sort of immigrant and they wouldn't let her out. And I was just thinking in my mind, I was like, wow, is this what white privilege is? That would never happen to someone like me. But I guess it happens to all types of people, all types of colors, just in different ways, that you are put in these crazy situations where you have nothing and you have no one, and it could be just because of either you're a woman or because you're a woman of color. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. There's just so many boxes and labels that we put on things. I think that it's hard because I was taught my whole life that homeless people, really, they're just scammers, that they're trying to get your money. So a lot of times in Oregon, we do see a lot of homeless people who wear nice clothes and they have nice shoes, and they don't look like they're homeless. And that's just their means. Panhandling is their means of getting money.
Right. And then you'll see how on the news they'll do like a story about this man pretends to be homeless to go get money. And it's like, well, honestly, when you're giving away $1, it's gone. It's out of your hands. Don't worry about how the other person spends it.
Right. Right.
Like, you're giving it away to somebody. Does it have to be because they live on the street?
Right.
Don't be so stingy. And maybe if you just want to help out with food and blankets, donate stuff to shelters.
Exactly. We're lucky enough to have a really good food program. And I think in Salem we have 7 or 8, maybe even 10 different food programs, as well as soup kitchens. We have lots of soup kitchens, more than just one. So they all kind of rotate, and homeless people usually know where to go for that. We have family members who volunteered and done that.
I remember being a kid, and like me and my sister and I think a few of my friends, we had this idea that like we were going to make bum baskets and that's how we were going to market them. And I just now realize how wrong that sounds.
It's actually, in certain areas, it's illegal in Salem now to stop and give homeless people things because it impedes traffic. And so they want you to, and they don't want people to loiter in certain areas. So there's certain parks that they've made it illegal for you to give homeless people anything, just because they don't want homeless people to stay there. Like birds, just like birds, if you give birds the food, they'll only come to that area to get the food.
Yeah.
And they consider homeless people to be an annoyance. And so
they're like, those damn bums.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, come on, they're people, they're humans. stop treating them horribly.
And there's like more than enough food for everybody to not be hungry. And that's been proven.
Right. Exactly. I just always get angry at those people who have, a 10,000 square foot home and then they do nothing to help anybody in the society with all of their millions and millions of dollars, and then they don't do any sort of philanthropy to try to help the environment or help people.
It would impede with too much businesses that are making money to try to help the world because of some sort of oil field they have or some sort of factory they have or deforestation. Dang, how we went off on a tangent.
I know, I'm so sorry. I wasn't trying to bring it into a negative mode. I just wanted to share my ghost story and my experience with her and the sadness that I felt when I was talking with her, really.
No,
that was really my point, was the ghost part of it, but we did go off on a tangent.
No, I think it just brought up so much rage of just like, why did this happen? Why did she do it? Of course she had to do it. Of course she didn't have to do it. Like, there's a lot of debate and emotion in these type of stories, and I don't think I do enough to like help the homeless at all. Ever since I remember being a kid, and I was like calling these companies, and I was calling Target, and I was like, yeah, I want to make these baskets, or would you donate anything? And they were like, yeah, what's it for? And I was like, bum baskets. And they were like, oh, you're going to give this to the homeless people? And we were like, yeah. And they did not want to be associated with that. I guess that'd be bad press. And that's kind of when I realized, like, oh, the people aren't going to help me do that.
Exactly. Whereas we made baskets for soldiers when the kids' dad was over in Kuwait, and we got tons of free stuff from all these businesses in Salem and sent them overseas. But yeah, had I been asking for homeless people, nobody would have given anything. But I do know that there are outreach programs where you can donate stuff in our town, and I'm sure it's the same across the United States, maybe even other countries. I would be really interested to know what happens in other countries. If you think of Australia, remember how Australia, they used to say, was where homeless and people who were imprisoned would go. And I don't know if you ever heard that story.
Yeah, like how it was like a little island just for prisoners.
Yeah, right. Prisoners and homeless people. So I was just like, that's not what Australia is now, but it would be interesting to see if they still have a homeless problem after thousands and thousands of years of having that.
I have no idea.
Title.
Right? Australian listeners, please write to us.
Yes. Tell me. I need to know. What is it like there now?
Oh my gosh. Wow. We always managed to pack in so much in one episode.
I know. I hope you guys enjoyed our little stories, and I felt like it was a really heavy Wendy episode. Sorry about that.
No, that's no problem. I love all your stories. And thank you guys for listening. We're going to be back next time, as always. What are we talking about next time? Oh, we're talking about different types of aliens. I'm actually really excited about this.
Very
so
excited.
We're going to be researching aliens and coming at you with our UFO weirdness next time.
Whoop, whoop.
I can't even remember what I normally say, so
that's... You need me to take over? I can do it. Okay, so you guys, make sure to look for us on all of our social media. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Cousins Coven, and then also find us on our website at cousinscoven.home.blog, where you can find some weird witchy wisdom and also just interesting things in our archived episodes. Make sure to come listen to us next week, where we are going to talk about those aliens. And what else do we normally say? I think that's about it. Let's just wrap it up.
Yes.
Thank you for listening. That's what we really
love
need to
and
say. Yes.
Next time.
That's right. So may you find happiness in your heart, love for yourself, and join each other. Blessings to all.